Successful cover becomes almost second nature.
At Chantilly, Patrick Macnee drives a very special car, Cubby Broccoli's own Rolls-Royce.
It was his real car, which he'd driven from London to Paris in.
We wanted a Rolls-Royce that was elegant, and obviously Cubby's was the real choice.
It was an early Silver Cloud, and it was a great Rolls-Royce, and we still have it to this day.
Trying to get this car through these gates, which were made for horse carriages, which, as you know, are narrower than what is made for a motor car. And Cubby used to sit in a director's chair just the other side of this thing when I was driving it through, looking at his precious car to see that nothing would happen to it. I never forget his expression, sort of a praying expression.
The continuation of the scene is filmed later, back in England.
We actually shot that with a real Rolls-Royce, going into a gravel pit in Denham near Pinewood Studios.
But of course, when it gets sunk, we didn't want to sink Cubby, so we bought a duplicate.
We used a real Rolls-Royce. What else does one do on a Bond?
At the end of August, the first unit returns to Pinewood Studios. Then, on September 3rd, they go to the races.
The horse racing in the film was kind of surfaced because Cubby was interested in breeding at that time and racing horses, and he had quite a stable himself. Of course, it wasn't really horse racing going on at the time, but we put on Ascot. We recreated it, and I had everyone get on the tails and the high top hats, and it turned out to be one of our easier locations.
The unit then moves to the Amberley Chalk Pits Museum in West Sussex to film the exterior of Zoran's mine. During the filming, Tanya Roberts requests a costume alteration for her character.
They brought out these gigantic overalls, and you wouldn't have been able to see me, so I just asked them to take a little nip and a tuck, and they did, and then they fit like an Armani suit.
Pity you couldn't find one that fits.
When the crew returns to Pinewood, Roger Moore meets a new co-star.
Within minutes of meeting this wonderful man, I'm sitting in a jacuzzi with very little on, playing that hot tub scene with him. It took a whole day to shoot the jacuzzi scene, and from the moment I got into the hot tub with Roger to the moment I got out, I guess we were in the water about 8 or 9 hours, so you can imagine the state of our skin when we got out.
At the end of September, the first and second units fly to San Francisco, where the mayor welcomes them with open arms.
What a wonderful place to shoot, San Francisco. Nice climate, and at that time Diane Feinstein was mayor.
She wanted to really promote the city, she wanted to promote filmmaking there. She made things happen.
It was just lucky and fortunate enough that she was one of the rare people that preferred me as Bond instead of Sean. And so we got all sorts of permits.
Joining the cast in San Francisco is David Yip, better known to British TV viewers as the Chinese detective.
I was terrified, to meet Roger Moore, and he was sweet. He was a sweetheart.
The biggest problem I realised was crowds. I mean, you got onto Fisherman's Wharf and it set all this up, but there were literally thousands of people wanting to see the filming.
I went up to visit Roger and Louisa just for dinner and say hello in San Francisco, and they were shooting at Fisherman's Wharf. And I am said to be in the background somewhere, so I've actually made 3 James Bond movies.
She said, just for a bit of fun, I'll just walk in the background like an extra. She did.
I mean, that's the great big mystery. Can you find me in The View to a Kill? Please let me know when and where.
Beginning in early October, the second unit spends 3 weeks filming the exciting fire engine chase.
Arthur Worcester was given the task of shooting a lot of the night material of the fire engines.
We did something like 4 weeks of nights. I mean, I was directing and photographing, and I was liking a quarter of a mile a night.
The fire department, once they got over the initial shock of doing a chase with one of their engines, were very cooperative.
Had great fun driving fire engines. That gives you such a sense of power. You have to drive that thing with that wow siren.
Driving a fire truck, I mean, it's every kid's dream, isn't it?
Raise the bridge? Right now?
I had visions of the fire truck leaping the bridge when it's virtually up to its highest.
You had to do the jump at a very high speed just about as fast as that fire engine could possibly go, which is about 80 miles an hour.
We all had our fingers crossed.
It flew across, and the suspension just shattered on it. I mean, when it landed the other side. When I finished that, I was on my knees. It was a very tough shoot, actually.
Meanwhile, on October 6th and 7th, the first unit set San Francisco's City Hall ablaze.
When you go to a mayor or city officials and you say, oh, by the way, we also want to set the City Hall on fire, that can cause quite a stir.
The trickiest part of the whole operation was convincing everybody out there that we could actually, set fire to City Hall, but not really. We just make it look that way.
While they were setting up, I took a walk around. It's a beautiful building. And then they said, well, yeah, we're going to set fire to it.
We had a fire up there that you could literally, sort of turn on and off.
Put huge gas burners up there and what we call dantes, which emit a huge amount of flame. Everyone was convinced that the City Hall had burnt down. People were totally convinced. There was so much fire coming from the roof.
And you think, oh my God, this is amazing,
We were able to hose the front of the City Hall down. She'd given instructions everybody should close their windows. One didn't, so he got a very wet desk the next morning.
While the first unit continues filming in San Francisco, the model unit films shots of Zorin's airship at the Golden Gate Bridge, in England, at Pinewood Studios.
We built some full-size pieces on the back lot of the Golden Gate Bridge.
We built sections of the bridge on a fairly large scale, 4:1, with a balloon attached to it. We built sections of the bridge on the lot full size. We did sections on the stage. It was a real sort of jigsaw puzzle.
Physically, you can't shoot those angles. I mean, they would have to build rigging for cameras that would be impossible to do. So that was all reconstructed in the studio.
Probably about 5% was on the Golden Gate Bridge, and the rest was on replica of the top section.
But even so, in the studio, we were up high. Charles Staffel, who was the front projection expert at Pinewood, did a fantastic job for us. He made a rig where he had the front projection machine suspended from the ceiling, and we had Roger Moore and Tanya Roberts doing their stuff where he's holding her by her fingertips, suspended over the traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge.
There was no fear or anything. You were like 3 feet off the ground instead of 300.
That was the section of the bridge we shot on the stage. We also had a miniature bridge constructed on the lot.
And then there was full scale of the North Tower, where the actual gondola hits.
I was part of a team under John Richardson who fabricated this whole half of the underside of this blimp, which we hung on a big crane.
And that was more controllable because you could bring in the cameras and the equipment and get the actors up and get the actors off.
It took us 2 to 3 months to fabricate in steel the underside of the blimp, which we then put polystyrene sections in.
Apart from that airship, we had some 20-footers that were always inflated and permanently hung from a crane. We built a 40-foot long one, which we could fill with helium. And then we also had some little 4-foot ones for the, sort of more distant shots where you wanted to look as though there was an airship a long way away.
And all of that had to be integrated into the live shots that we had.
Editor Peter Davies mixes special effect shots, miniature shots, and even shots of 2 stuntmen on this world-famous landmark to create this electrifying sequence.
It was amazing when it all came together and it looked so real. It was very gratifying for all concerned.
The crew at Pinewood begin to shoot interiors, including the special effects scenes of the burning elevator shaft.
That involves all of the, the usual problems of filming with fire, added to which you're in a natural funnel, being an elevator shaft, and all the hot air goes up.
Roger Moore came up to me and he said when he saw Tanya hanging by her bootstraps in the elevator shaft and the flames licking all around her, he said to me, are you sure are you sure about this? Because it wouldn't look too good in the morning if something had happened, And I said, well, we're being very careful, Roger.
Give me a hat.
There was a lot of hanging, and there was a lot of smoke, and there was a lot of heat, and it took a long time.
I must say that Tanya was fantastic. She was very, very brave.
Eventually, the filmmakers shoot all they can on the other stages. Now they need to build sets and get the final shots on the new 007 stage, which is still under construction.
You know, we were trying to build a new set at the new stage being built, but we were stopped because it was a repair to an existing building, and the new rules demanded that we had to wait until the roof was in position.
We did what we could in postponing, you know, shooting what we could before getting onto that sequence.
I had to go to Cubby and say, look, you know, we've run out of sets. There's nothing we can do. You know, there's nothing I can do. The set will be finished in about 8 days. So he said, fine.
There was a big set to build, so it was a fantastic effort on everyone's behalf.
On January 7th, 1985, after filming has already commenced inside it, a ceremony is held for the official reopening of the new 007 stage.
Pinewood proposed calling it the Cubby Broccoli 007 stage in honor of Cubby and his long association with them and the film industry in England.
We invited the world's press, and we had the cast of View to a Kill out there. It was a very exciting day.
Here we go. This is it. This is it. And I suppose it's nothing to do with Cubby's girth, but it is being called the Albert R. Broccoli stage. It's because of the size of his heart.
In mid-January, work begins on the mine flood scenes, the final to be shot.
We had a full-size set that we flooded with tip tanks and hoses.
And it was flooded with great force. It was an enormous wall of water which came down. I had to be swept into a little hut, and it was unbelievably powerful, this current of water. It swept me right past the hut.
I would put people on cables so you could pull them and get that feeling that they were really being driven by the water.
On the set, Grace Jones gets more than she bargained for.
I didn't warn Grace when the mine was flooded that I'd put in various sparking effects, which are supposed to be electrical cables hitting the water and arcing. She screamed. All the screams you hear are perfectly genuine. She was convinced she was going to be electrocuted. And afterwards she said, you so-and-so, blank, 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 you didn't warn me that you'd fix those things in. And I said, well, you know, we got the reaction, didn't we?
After overcoming the obstacles of shooting in some of the world's most challenging locations, the filmmakers then returned to San Francisco to premiere the film in true James Bond style.
I had a check for $100,007, and I made a jump from a helicopter, flew into City Hall, and landed there and was going to give the check, and did to Roger Moore, and then he gave it to Mayor Feinstein.
So it was quite a day.
With the film finished, Roger Moore makes a bittersweet decision.
When they start running out of actors old enough to look as though they could be knocked down by Bond, and leading ladies are your mother's age when you started making Bond, then it's time you move on.
Roger felt, more than anyone else, that the time had come to gracefully say bye-bye. I think that it was Roger's decision. It was not Cubby's or MGMUA's or anyone else. It was Roger who said, I think I've had enough. I think this is the end of the road. Let's part friends.
He'd been saying for some time, getting a bit long in the tooth to be doing this James Bond stuff. He was well over 50 at the time, and he was looking forward to us recasting.
A View to a Kill becomes one of the biggest box office hits of 1985 and marks the end of an era for one of the screen's most popular 007s.
I think Roger is the great man